In this episode of Woven Lives, we will be talking to Felicity Irons BEM, who runs Rush Matters, one of the largest weaving businesses in the UK, employing 4 full-time staff, 6 home workers, and 3 seasonal harvest workers. Felicity is best known for the floor matting which she and her team create for National Trust properties such as Hardwick Hall, Avebury Manor, and Upton House. The floor matting completely transforms the interior of these historic buildings. As visitors walk on the soft plaited rushes, the scent of the interwoven herbs and the natural colours connects them to a time long ago when nobility furnished their homes with these beautiful hand-woven carpets. The repeat pattern of the 9-end plait, which can at times be 2 miles long, is sewn together by hand to fit the room exactly. The sumptuous colours of the rushes, which range from light greens, yellows, and biscuit browns, add a warmth to the room. As the matting reaches the edges of the room, a smaller plait is carefully stitched along the entire boundary line of the matting. The floor matting also looks fabulous in contemporary homes, so this ancient tradition now has a future in modern interior design. Felicity started Rush Matters over 30 years ago. She began buying rushes from Tom Arnold, a local freshwater rush harvester. Sadly, he passed away, so his brother Jack suggested she take on the rush cutting, which Tom had once managed. Felicity and her team now harvest huge quantities of rushes on aluminium punts along the River Ouse and River Ivel in Bedfordshire and the Nene in Northamptonshire, harvesting 2 tons per day, all cut by hand. It's hard work, which requires a great deal of skill and strength, but what an amazing sight to see bolts of rushes stacked high on these boats floating down the river. Once dried, the rushes are woven into a wide variety of homeware, from traditional log baskets, Moses baskets, bags, and table mats, to contemporary style work, such as large 2-metre diameter poufs, wall matting, spiral rugs, cushions, and accessories. The techniques used date back centuries and are mainly variations of plaits, but also include check weave, pairing, coiling, knotting, twining, and chair seating. Herbs such as lavender, chamomile, and wormwood are woven into the plaits, adding delicious scents to the pieces. In her recent collaboration with Christopher Jenner Design, Felicity was commissioned to create a finely woven seat for an English oak chair frame, which had been created using computer-based technology. Felicity wove exceptionally fine rushes to create the seat, which took 7 weeks to complete. This fusion of hard-won traditional skills with digital processes created a stunning and unique piece of furniture. Some of Rush Matters' notable customers include Mulberry, Ralph Lauren, David Mellor, and Aesop. Felicity has also made work for TV and film, including Game of Thrones. Felicity's work has featured in the Natural Room, created by Sarah Myerscough Gallery, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and she also sells work across the globe. In 2017, Felicity was awarded the British Empire Medal for saving the rush cutting industry, and in 2011 she was awarded the CPRE Living Countryside Award. Hello Felicity, and welcome to Woven Lives.
Thank you, Sue.
Can you explain how you first started weaving and what made you decide to become a full-time rush weaver?
Well, it started in 1992. I wasn't able to get a sort of proper job because I'd had a car accident and was having quite intense treatment, but got really bored with the doctor saying, oh, you mustn't do this for more than 20 minutes and that for more than 20 minutes. And I thought that's just going to be too difficult for me to continue. I just couldn't do that. I got itchy feet. And so my mum and dad were both in the antiques trade. And I came back from Australia after the car accident to live with my mum again. She was a antique dealer and upholsterer, so there was always chairs around the place that needed sorting out. So I thought, well, maybe I could have a go at rush seating. So I picked up a book, and it was an old Batsford Craft paperback book, and taught myself rush seating. And I was given a chair to do by another dealer. I did the chair 3 times. I kept undoing it and doing it again because I wasn't happy with it. And then I thought, well, maybe I could make a living at this. So I went to the Prince's Youth Business Trust, as was, now all under the umbrella of the Prince's Trust, to see if I could get a set-up loan, which they did in 1992. So then I started just doing recaning and rush seating. I paid that loan off 3 years later and went to got an expansion loan. And by this time, I'd moved workshops, and several times I moved in with a chap called John Harbidge, and he really, really encouraged me to just be more creative and have a go. And I always felt held back because I couldn't draw. And he just said, you don't need to draw. Don't worry about it. Just do it. So I just taught myself all these other things that we do now. And then, and actually Holyrood House got in contact with me and asked me to tender for the rush matting for Holyrood House. And I panicked somewhat and thought, oh my God, how am I going to do that? And so I taught myself how to do 9-end plaiting and put in for the tender. Obviously, I didn't get it because I couldn't personally do it all on my own.
Yeah.
But it pushed me to take on people.
Okay. So how did Holyrood House know about you?
Absolutely no idea.
Okay.
Not back then.
Because you wouldn't have had any internet, would you?
No.
So you would have just been advertising, like selling your chairs.
Yeah. And I did it. I just used to buy and sell antiques and do chair seating. And I started sort of having a go at making table mats and things. And John encouraged, we designed some furniture, which the collaboration incorporated rush in different ways. And I wove some, split down ash. So I made some furniture with ash in it and things like that. But I have no idea. I don't know how. I've never been able to find out how they heard about me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you learning all these different techniques through books all the time?
Like not when you were beginning, I was just looking at things and taking things apart and having a go. The chair seating, I then found my Bible of chair seating, which is the Kay Johnson, Mary Butcher and Olivia Elton Barratt chair seating book, which I was then able to use for all sorts of different types of techniques of rush seating.
Okay.
But no, other things, I just had a go.
Because there wasn't many rush workbooks, was there?
No. And things I did get, they were libraries and things were selling them off because they were sort of books from the 60s and 70s. So they were no longer in print. So I still got those, and they're quite fun to look at again. But yeah, I never used them to actually start my work. I've just collected them because they're always really interesting to have.
It's really interesting that you were finding items and taking them apart to figure out how they were constructed.
And then I found some books, and the recipes were so awful, I'd used them, and they didn't work. So I realised that sometimes people padded out a book with a bit of rush work in, and they never worked. So I just thought, I have to do it my way then. I have to work out how to do it.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, so more or less self-taught.
Oh, yeah, I am. Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us who are the rush weavers who you've most admired?
I would say Olivia Elton Barratt really was, I always considered her to be like the grandma of rush work. And I had her book, and I was amazed that she could make a hat in 45 minutes. I thought, what? I can do one in 2 hours, and I think that's pretty good going. And I don't really want to go any faster. But that's beside the point. She was very inspiring, and she was such a lovely, lovely lady and so knowledgeable. And she used to just bring people to the workshop and say, I think you should go and meet Felicity, and Felicity should meet you. and when and she also proposed me as a yeoman, which was just such a massive thing for me. For anyone to take me seriously in that way, it was the first time ever, and I was just so astounded. And when she died, I felt as though it really hit me so strongly, and that shocked me. But because she was obviously more important than I thought she could have been, and I went to her funeral and I just bawled my eyes out, just because she was like this icon for me, really. And Mary Butcher, who is just such a knowledgeable lady, such a lovely lady, and really accomplished, a really skilled maker. And she was trade advisor to the livery for 20 years. Since she stepped down, I think the most anyone has ever stayed in that position has been 2 years. I think that says quite a lot about someone. And just so knowledgeable, really, and wanting to also to pass that knowledge on as well, like Olivia did. She wanted to teach, and it's really important. Yeah.
I was taught by Olivia at the City.
Who were you?
City Lit in, I'm trying to remember now, it would have been 2002 to 2004.
And how did you find her?
Amazing.
Yeah.
She's
like a little powerhouse.
She was amazing. She used to drink like really thick black coffee. And she used to have a cigarette on the end of a cigarette holder.
Oh, wow.
She was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really great.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, was there many other people doing Rush?
No,
or was she the main person?
She was the main person. Yeah. She was like a little powerhouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very inspiring woman.
And if you went wrong, she would go, no. So really scared of going wrong.
Oh, no. People might say that about me. They say that I'm a really, really good teacher. Yeah. But sometimes they say, oh, you're a little bit scary. I think that's my mother coming out of me, actually, because she was a teacher.
What I'm quite interested in finding out about is about your original Rush supplier, Tom Arnold. Can you tell us a little bit more about him?
He was amazing. He was amazing in so many ways. He was enormous. Yeah. He must have been about 6'7". Yeah. He had an enormous head. Or maybe he didn't, but he looks like he got a massive head. And he was quite well built, but he in so many ways he was a big character. And he was just such a wonderful person to meet. And it was, I feel, sort of, I don't know what the word, privileged to have met him and known him for a short time. He lived over in Holywell, near Huntingdon, and he lived probably 10 metres away from the river, and in a house called Wildcroft. And his family had been cutting rush back to sort of 1700s.
Wow. Incredible.
And he and his wife, I'm not sure when they started doing it, but his wife, Alma, would go out, and she considered it to be her holiday every year. She'd go out and do 2 weeks cutting a year and thought this was just bliss, you know. So they didn't cut on the scale that we do, but she cut until her 70s.
Wow.
Tom didn't do any cutting.
Wow.
He had it completely sussed. He would, in his heyday, he had a fleet of 16 punts, but they weren't so much for cutting.
Okay.
They were, because he only cut for 2 weeks of the year, really. The rest of the time, he would let his punts out, rent his punts out two people who wanted to go punting.
Okay.
And so he would let these punts out, and there's this wonderful story where he'd call across to Alma, bring us another wallet. So he'd filled one wallet with wad and money, and she'd just bring another one over to him to fill with his money, his cash from the punters, literally the punters. Yeah, but when he was cutting rush, he mainly attracted students from Cambridge, because obviously it wasn't far from the university, and they'd come over and they'd cut. And I mean, they were paid piece rate, just like we are when we go out cutting. And he'd have the pints, because they always cut along the same stretch of river each year. And he'd just line the punts up along the side of the river, and they'd come back for all of his cutters, and they'd have a pint when they got in each night. Yeah.
So were they actually? Do you know who they were supplying the rushes to?
Just to private individuals.
Okay, like hobbyists.
Yeah, and sometimes I know that he'd wrap them up, and then he'd take them to his train station, and they would be put on the train to go around to wherever they were being posted to.
Amazing.
Yeah, and he would have his rushes drying on wires. So he'd have upright poles, and he'd have wires strung up between them, and he would dry the rush over the wires by the river. And if he, but he was an eel man, and so he loved going out with his traps, and he'd go and set the traps out and collect the eels up, and he would send his eels to London that he caught.
Yeah.
And there was a trap that he was purported to have made, and it was up on the wall at the Ferryboat Inn, which was next door to where he lived. And when I used to go and buy rush from him, he was rarely at home. His wife, Alma, had died I never met her. And if he wasn't in, I'd go into the ferryboat, into the little bit called the snug, and he and all the old boys, his mates, would be sitting in the snug, and there'd be, they were just this fantastic crew of blokes who were all the same age, and they all lived in the village. And Pete taught me how to sharpen my rush knife properly. And and David Anderson, he owned all the land, so he'd known Tom. They'd known each other all their lives. So I always got permission from David to go and cut rush when I took over. But while Tom was alive, if I hadn't got cash to pay Tom, I would then he'd say, make your check out to the pub, girl. So I'd make my check out to the ferryboat for all of his beer.
So when you first started cutting your own rushes, when Tom had passed away, and Jack said, why don't you take over? How did you learn how to do all the cutting?
I met Jack. I'd never met Jack before, and he lived over the road, and they hadn't spoken to each other for 20 odd years. Funny families, aren't they? And so Jack said, well, I bought everything Tom had left, and I said, well, what's going to happen now? And he said, well, I'm not taking it on. And he was in his 70s. He said, why don't you do it? And I sort of panicked and said, but I've only just set up in business. I can't afford to buy another business. He said, it's not like that, girl. Come on, I'll take you down the river. So it was a 2-hour lesson in punting and cutting. And because it was so near where they lived, he'd just say, pump me to the bank, girl. And he got off, walked home, and that was it.
And did you find it easy, or was it really difficult?
Well, punting was okay. I mean, beautiful pitch pine 17-foot long punts, but the cutting, to start with, was quite hard because you mustn't touch the root structure.
I see.
Because if you touch the root structure, they're not going to regrow.
Yeah.
So you have to keep your knife really sharp and get your knife on the river bed, and it's a one cut through, so you get a really clean cut. But you mustn't. There's no dragging, so people always think it's like scything,
Yeah.
But it isn't. And so that took a while, and I punted, which is fine going downstream, empty, but going back upstream, headwind.
Yeah. Because you've got them piled so high, haven't
well,
you?
then when I started, I wasn't quite so high.
Okay.
But I go out for 3 years. I cut on my own over on that stretch of river by Tom's house. And I had a van, and I go out in the mornings, cut, load the van up, go out again in the afternoon and cut on my own. So I probably cut, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 bolts of rush a day then. Because punting back and forth twice a day was really hard work. Of course, Tom had outdoor engines then.
Okay.
So they were fine.
Yeah.
Whizzing up and down the place.
But you're doing it by hand, aren't you?
Yeah. So 17-foot long punt, and the poles are probably 20 foot long.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, they're longer than that. 25 foot long. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose we've always been canoeists, but it is quite different. And of course, you've got all these other vessels on the river.
Yeah.
So you have to give way and all this sort of thing.
And of course, you've got to look after your rushes so they don't all get crunched up.
Yeah.
So it's quite it's highly skilled work, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we take new people on and they just can't do it.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Everyone thinks, oh, that looks good. That looks really easy. And it isn't.
No, it doesn't. I think the films make it look. The films of you doing it make it look
so romantic.
Yeah.
But it isn't. I mean, it is for us. I mean, it's not romantic, but it is. It's such a special time of year for us. Because we don't often just don't see people. And you're doing a really honest day's work. And you're seeing things and you're on parts of the river no one else is on. And no one gets that opportunity because you're on private land. And you're not, so they're never going to, and it's just wonderful.
I was going to ask you about the relationship that you have with the river, because you're going there every year, aren't you, at the same time of the year?
Yeah.
So you must have this really strong bond with the area, with the river.
Yeah.
Like you must have a really interesting relationship with the river, because we're cutting willow.
Yeah.
So we have a relationship with the land that we grow the willow on. But for you, it's completely different. You're in this beautiful environment. And I really wanted to learn about your relationship that you have with the river.
Yeah, well, it's vital, our relationship with the river. We don't have the rush on the river. We don't have a living. But the river is... the different sections of the river, it's so special because you get to know the river as well. You remember where the beds grow really well, or where they stop, or you've got really, really fine rush. And the rivers, despite what everyone thinks, the rivers we often find them very, very clean because you get freshwater mussels in the rivers. But at the same time, we see pollution now, which we never saw before. The little plastic, micro plastics. Yeah. They're coming into the rivers now, which is really sad.
Okay.
But the river is so clear, and the fish come round you. You fish and you get that sort of pedicure thing,
that people pay hundreds for.
Yeah. So if it's really shallow, we'll be cutting in the water, and then it's difficult to sort of explain, but it's a very special place certainly to me. I have thought, when I go, the ashes are going in the river. I think, because. Probably. And each river, the rush grows so differently on each river.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you learn about where you're going to go each year to get the rushes?
We don't cut in the same place for 3 years, except when we go over to the Nene, because it just grows so well there. And I think it's the build-up of silt. And because it's a river island, and so it's the water has been taken from the main river in 2 places. So it stops handle flooding.
I see.
So you get such a build-up of silt on it, and it's stone, it's a rock, because obviously a lot of Northamptonshire's, the towns are stone built. And so it grows massively. They're about 3 meters tall over there.
Wow.
They're the longest we get.
Okay.
And when I'm working, I can tell at an Oundle Rush, they're quite different. And then you get the higher stretches of the Ouse, and again they're different. So they'll be finer, often quite fine. And then you go to the outer stretches of the Ouse, so down by Tom, and they're different again. And the wildlife you see is sort of reducing, sadly, and that. So we don't see quite so many mayflies and damselflies.
I was going to ask you if you'd noticed changes to the river, because you've been cutting for like 30 years now.
Yeah, since 94.
Yeah, so you've seen changes due to global warming.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
So you've got the plastic pollution and
and you get
the
runoff.
lack of insects.
You know,
Okay,
so there's that. We don't see so many frogs anymore. We used to get frogs in, toads in the punts.
Wow.
My brother's nickname was Frog as a child, and he always managed to get frogs in his punts.
Yeah. Amazing.
But actually last year we got an eel, and that was so lovely, because we did have an eel in the boat a couple of times. So little ones. And so that's sign of optimism that we've seen those again. But and the otters are great. I've only ever seen one otter in 30 years of cutting rush, which is wonderful to see. But the consequences of that, you don't get any swans.
That's right.
You don't get any cygnets. You don't get any, ducklings or moorhens, because they take the lot. And you don't get the fish either. So, yeah. But the reed warblers are about, and the kingfishers are just amazing if you see them, because my ear's always tuned to this high-pitched squeal, and then they'll get the darting colour past you. Amazing,
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a special place.
Yeah. And bats. I've had bats. Yeah.
And do you ever have any problems sourcing rushes? Are they always there every year where they're going to be growing?
They have reduced on the sections. We cut on what's called the trout stream at Houghton, downstream of St Ives, and we were cutting there. And again, that's a tributary of the main river, and it grows so well there. One year we were cutting, and the Environment Agency came along and said they were going to spray with Roundup.
Oh, God.
And I said, he said, "Oh, we're due to do this." And I said, "Please not do that.
Yeah.
We are cutting. We have, if you look downstream, we work downstream, upstream, and you can see we've cut all the rush." And he said, "Oh, well, you have to go and speak to my boss, because I'm meant to be spraying it." And the Environment Agency do that because we're not sure whether it's because of flooding or whether it's fishermen starting to get greater rights because it's called the trout stream, and they think they're going to get trout back in there. But it's just, it's a poison going into the water. And we've noticed it. Yeah. You can see where it's damaged the water and the growth. And we don't see what we used to see over there.
It's insane to think that's actually legal.
Yeah.
To put Roundup in water.
Oh, glyphosate, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so, and also the Environment Agency, it's contracted out. And when I first started cutting, a chap called Michael Irons, we must have been related somewhere down the line, and he was a contractor for the Environment Agency, and he knew the river like the back of his hand. Because what they do is they have to keep the central section from St Ives Lock out, downstream, clear, because it's navigable. And so they have a boat that goes along, and it has a massive great pair of scissors on the bottom and a vertical chainsaw. and they're meant to just keep the central channel clear so that the pleasure boats don't get tangled up in the weed and things. Now we're finding that Michael's retired and I'm, maybe not with us anymore, but they now just reverse into the rush beds. They cut the rush beds. So we have seen it go there. Mm-hmm. So I'm in contact with the Environment Agency a lot more than I've ever had to be. Mm-hmm. And when we found them going to spray, there was quite a lot of communication.
Yeah. Oh, well done you.
Yeah.
That's great. So what I'd really like to learn about as well is about the floor matting that you make. You make a tremendous amount of floor matting for National Trust properties. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of that?
I mean, it dates back to, earlier than medieval times. It's when you could start weaving, it was used as a flooring because obviously it was quite hard wearing in those times. But you had, say in your house or my house, we wouldn't have had it woven. We'd have had strewings on the floor because you'd have had earthen floors.
Do you mean loose?
Just loose okay. rushes strewn all over the floor. Yeah. And that would have been changed each year because you'd have harvested some more because it would have been warmer in the winter because earthen floors, and then summer it was less dust. Okay. But then it was the wealthier houses started having it in their houses. So, but the technique has not changed.
Okay.
The earliest I've seen it, is Hampton Court. We've done work there, and obviously that I'm not sure the precise dates, but it's really very early. Would easily be 11th century. Yeah. And obviously weaving predates pottery because they would have used a woven basket to put their clay around and then fired that. Obviously the willow would have burned. But yeah, and so our techniques have changed very, very little from, our techniques are the same as they would have been. And we make a 9-end flat weave. So 9 ends, and within each end, you have 4 or 5 rushes within each end, and you work from the outside to the centre, and it needs to be strong and tight because obviously rush loosens once it dries because each rush loses its moisture, so shrinks but doesn't tighten. So we have to constantly work as tight as possible, and then. I have 6 girls who work from home for me, which we've taught originally, and then they teach their aunts, sons, daughters. They're all Bengali. It just has happened that way because I don't know how many years ago I put an advert in the paper, and one girl took to it, and after I taught her, and then she said, "Oh, can my aunt do it? Can my sister do it?" So it's just evolved that way. So I've had various families. So I take them, they say their plaiting is done. I collect their work. I take them more rush, and they work when they want to, very much. Then we have to dry it, and then we sew it with a 6-inch long sacking needle and a 3-ply jute twine. So it hasn't changed really for centuries and
That's
centuries.
Incredible.
And at Hardwick Hall, we're back there again at the moment. We've been working there for probably 20 years. And it was when Bess, who was a contemporary of Elizabeth I, very, very wealthy lady, built the old hall at Hardwick Hall now, and built Chatsworth. But Hardwick, she put matting in, and it was known as Hardwick matting because it was on every floor. And because obviously it was warmer. They're freezing, these houses. I mean, I don't even, it's freezing now. I don't know how they get warm. The 50-metre long gallery, there's 2 fireplaces in it. And so we freeze when we're up there. And yeah, so that's 50 metres long by 6 metres 70 wide.
Wow. So how do you go, what's the like starting process? If you've got that huge space to cover, do you start back here in the workshop?
Yeah,
or do you
so
do
we make
everything?
it in sections here.
Okay.
The first time we did it in 50 metre long. So we make metre wide sections, metre 20 wide sections here, and then we'll take them up on site, whether it's hardware, whether it's a modern house, wherever, if we're fitting. And then we sew those together on site, and then they're cut to fit round whatever. So fireplaces, as you mentioned, radiators, freestanding radiators and all that sort of thing. And then it's bound. But this time, the past two times we've worked at the Long Gallery at Hardwick, we persuaded them we'd make them in rugs, because then we can move it around for them and they can manage the matting better with the footfall of the public. Yeah, it's interesting. You get to know how people walk.
I was going to say, you must have...
and where they walk.
So when they walk into the door,
yeah,
you know the people, that's sort of like the people's footprint, basically, because they're walking in and looking around.
Well, if you walk into a 50 metre long gallery, you're going to go, wow. So they stand there like this, and then they turn left, and then they turn centre, and then they turn right. And so you get, and they follow each other down the lines, so you get this track of where. And so now they can turn it. They have their team there that are quite accomplished now with working with it. Yeah. We met a lady up there when we were first there, Adelaide, who'd been there for 40 years.
Wow.
Working at Hardwick Hall.
How does it make you feel when you're in that, on the carpet, fixing it or repairing it or laying it, and you know that, that's what's been done in that space for all these hundreds of years?
It's interesting because since taking someone on, Emily, who is 27 and really excited about everything, and she's come up with us the past 2 weeks. And it's then when you've got someone new with you and who is so excited and so inspired by it, then you suddenly think, wow, it hits home again, because we go up there and we've become so used to it. Not that we're ever used to the building, because it's an extraordinary place. And then you just think, yeah, wow, we're doing this. You never become complacent because you're doing work that hasn't changed for so long, and it is historic, and it's monumental in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then we do work in really modern houses. Like we went over to Connecticut. We worked in a Daniel Libeskind design house, and they want it. So he has no right angles in any of his buildings. Amazing place. And our clients wanted the ultra modern house, and they wanted something that was complete opposite. So you get that juxtaposition of the wanting the raw rush matting in this super sleek house.
Yeah, amazing.
And they wanted some sense of history because it was such a modern house. So it fits all over, fits in all sorts of places, really.
It's so great to know it's got a future.
Yes,
yeah,
it does.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about was, can you tell us more about the rush chair collaboration you did with Christopher Jenner Design? And what was it like working a heritage craft alongside computer technology?
Well, Christopher was quite a force as well, is a force. He's a South African designer working in London. And he approached me and said he had this idea for the chair. And he just came up here and met me, sort of sussed me out. And we, he stayed, had lunch, we went to the bar, and, we just chatted. He said, this is my idea now. He said, I like you, and this is what I want to do. And it's going to be a limited edition of 14, and it will be a CNC made chair, 29 sections of oak, and I want you to weave within it. And I was a bit blown away, really, that someone could see, because people still, it's better now, but people do have a very traditional idea of basketry, those skills. And so for him to recognise that as a designer and say, can you do this, was amazing. I got a bit nervous because I thought, oh God, is it going to be strong enough? Is it going to be strong enough? But it was so tightly woven. And I was selecting the finest of rushes to work with, and pinning them on. So the former was a polystyrene, which was CNC'd to start with, that arrived, and so the former had to be absolutely precise. And then obviously the chair frame made up of 29 sections, which were then glued together, and then so that's incredibly precise. So that's the combination of the high tech and then the rush weaving. And then the rush, so I wove on the former, and then it was sandwiched between the pieces of oak. And I panicked and I thought, oh, well, maybe we should should be incorporating wire and things, but it didn't need it. It was, I never sat in it, but then I don't sit on anything I've done because it's not mine.
Okay.
Never. And I don't let anyone else sit on anything. That's not mine. You can sit on it when it's not done, but not when I've done it. It doesn't belong to me. And then they went out to Gallery Fumi, and
amazing. They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
So fine. And really incredible the way the flow of that oak matches the colour and the pattern of the seats well, doesn't it?
Of the rush. And I kept saying, because I still do it, I still select my rush colour. So I'll go to a bolt. I don't like that colour. Just choose one really bright. And so there were rings of really, really bright green. Obviously, it will all mellow down. So I could do it in a circle for so far, tiny pairing weave. And obviously, because of the shape of it, I then had to do chain pairing. And I was pinning it on with dressmaking pins so that it wasn't going to come off. But every sort of 5 centimetres, I was putting dressmaking pins in. 200 hours of work.
Must have been backbreaking.
No, because I had it set up.
Okay.
Everything here is set up so you don't hurt your back.
Okay,
so I
right.
had it at a level that was, because you spend so long at it, that you're never going to get to a position where it hurts. The piece I'm working on is on a drawing board, and then we can angle the piece of wood on the drawing board, drop it, flatten it, raise it, so I can work. So standing and it won't hurt. But that, I've done 3-4 of them.
Okay.
I think. But yeah, it was really interesting working with Christopher. And he was a very exciting designer. So he did quite a lot of different things. So he did hotel design, interiors, silver design, and he would go all around the world and choose the best craftspeople to work with.
Nice. What a great honour.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it was fun.
I was also going to ask you, do you have any favourite techniques with rush that you really enjoy making? Do you ever get time to make your own designs, or are you constantly working to commission?
Never get time to do. Never.
I thought you might say.
I don't. It's all sorts of things I'd really like to do, but I just don't. No. It's a real shame.
You're so busy.
Yeah, which is fantastic because that's the way I need to be because I have to pay salaries. But I suppose, so the piece behind you, which I'm working on, which is a rug in check weave, I don't know, I'm always astounded by the strength of it and the colours of it. And then I do something else and I just think, God, that shows off this rush so well. But the bed heads and things that we do, you just think, oh, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic. So it's not anything that, I like all of it, really. Yeah, I'm very fortunate because our year is quite diverse, I suppose. Because of harvesting, and then you come back here, and then you can recognise where that bolt was that you've selected from the barn. You think, yeah, I know who cut that, and I know where we cut that, and that's really special.
Yeah. So over time, how many apprentices do you think you've taught? How many people do you think you've taught how to continue the tradition of the rush weaving?
I've had quite a few people here. They haven't all stayed, but gosh, it'll be 15,
Wow, brilliant.
something like that.
Okay.
Demi, who's with me, she came at the age of 17 from school, and she came on the National Apprenticeship Scheme and had to come in on a fashion and textiles basis. This is the only way we could get someone in. And in September, she'll have been with me 13 years.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah. And she is such a skilled maker. Really very good.
How long does it take you to get somebody from like a complete beginner who comes to work with you to the point where you can leave them and just, show them the commission and then they can do it themselves?
That's it. To be able to leave them to do it on their own. Or probably over a year.
Yeah.
To be confident that
with them making every day.
Yeah. Yes, and then you feel you can show them something new to do, because you can't move people on until you know that they are actually skilled at that, to then use those techniques but in a different thing, So yeah, it takes a long time. Yeah, and then being able to see that. So if you say, I want you to do this, but it's going to be in this, so you need to translate what you've learned into that. That takes quite a while. And then they've got to be able to see it. They've got to be creative and see that. And at the moment, we've got a fantastic team, and it's really good. Ryan, in March, will have been with me 2 years. And he was going to leave because his girlfriend lives in Leicester and he wanted to move with her. And I was dreading it. I was gutted that he was going to go. But he went for a couple of interviews and decided that actually he realised that he absolutely loved it here and he saw his future here. And he's 25.
Oh, brilliant.
I nearly cried. I was so pleased that there was that love. He's really quiet. He's such a quiet chap. But I just thought, yes.
Such a great sense of achievement that you've taught people to continue the tradition of weaving to a high standard.
Yes, and he's so skilled now as well. Yeah, and willing to see. I can talk to him about, all right, this is what we need to do. This is the way I think we should do it. What do you think? And we can discuss things. And he's from a fashion background. He was from Central St Martin's. But he wove his own fabrics when he did that. So he's really interested in. That's great.
It's so important, isn't it, that we have more apprenticeships for training people.
Yes. Yeah. If we don't have that, we will lose these skills. And it isn't just something you say. They will go. They really will go. And you have to be able to find the right people to do that. And that takes such a long time to find the right person and then want to learn and want to stay and not mind that repetition. You have to get it right. You have to get it again and again and again. You must know what it's like when I remember you saying you hated square work.
Yeah, I do.
I still do.
I don't do it anymore.
Okay. But we have to make until it's absolutely right and we can sell it. And it's good enough. You're only ever good as your last job.
It's always really hard, isn't it, when you're teaching people and they want it to be perfect the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to get through to somebody that's not going to happen until you've made that 20 or 30 times. And that's a big hurdle for people to get over, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is really hard. They always seem to want to get things done so fast and get things done perfect the first time. And that's never going to happen. No. Never. So that's what I mean. You have to find the right person. And it's absolutely vital that we keep these skills going and using our hands, because people don't use their hands enough now. People use computers and they use their phones, and people can't write now. And it's absolutely vital that we keep using our hands and we learn these skills and pass these skills on to the younger generation.
Absolutely.
So I feel I feel very fortunate that we do have a 25-year-old, a 27-year-old, and Demi's nearly 30. So there, you know, it's great, and I find it really inspiring that young people, there are young people who really want to learn, and exciting that I can pass on those skills. Yeah, but you've got to find the right ones.
What advice would you give to someone who's starting out, who wants to be a basket maker?
I would say let your passion burn and learn from. Different because I'm self-taught, and there are so many teachers, so you can learn. But I would say, pull things apart in the sense of mentally pulling things apart, not necessarily physically, unless you can, and really getting to getting into the detail of things. And if you want to do it, you have to. I always said that no one's going to help me. You have to do it yourself. There is help out there now that I didn't have. I had the financial support of the Princess Trust, which was amazing, which puts me in really good stead business-wise. But in terms of learning, glean what you can from whoever you can, and just don't give up that passion. And start small. Don't advertise. Just start small. But it's really, really hard to earn a living. So you may have to, teach as well. But just don't try not to give up. And learn. And also, I say to people when I teach them, what I say is not gospel. You need to find the best way to learn from lots of people, and then think, actually, I found my path is better. The way to do it like this than other people, and get funding if you can get funding, but just really push yourself because you can do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Felicity, for your brilliant advice, and all your stories are amazing. Thank you.